Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to my corner of the universe. I started I started using Ecamm about almost 2 months ago now. I hadn't really put anything up with Ecamm before that, obviously. And when it came to my finding Ecamm, it was like, gosh, it's one of those aha moments because everything just worked. And it worked exactly as they said it did. I still have tons to learn about Ecamm and how to use it and what's the best way to use it for my um, shtick, I suppose. But it actually was really quite easy. And once I found out that there was a problem with my pad, because I was using my pad to do then, and Apple replaced the pad because there was a problem with the pad, everything just worked fine. You just plugged it in and it basically did what it said on the label. Um, there is extra science and lots of nuance and stuff, but basically it was a plug in and start going. And then start thinking about, well, I was thinking about things before that, but trying to figure out the best way of doing this. So I've learned a few things in the last couple of months. But the biggest thing, of course, is consistency. And at the time that I had just started this, the Ecamm came up with, announced that they were doing, oh, it is that morning. And yes, I have done my morning warm up, and I hope you have too. But it's still Monday morning, and anyway, they started something. They announced that they were doing something called Leap into Podcasting, which was a 2-day event at the end of September, which was this last weekend, and it was a conference. It was just like all the other conferences I've ever been to, and I've been to a lot, except that it was a virtual conference and there were ways of connecting with people. They had a couple of interesting features so that as you came into each session, you could actually take a seat next to somebody and chat with them while you were listening to the presenter. I didn't really chat with anybody because I just wanted to listen really to what was going on, which was great. And it was an interesting variety of presenters and an interesting way of working, because everybody, of course, has their own way of working. Everyone has their own way of teaching. Gosh, I've always known that. And not everyone learns in exactly the same way. And it did cater for that a bit, which was great. So some presenters were very, very focused on the material they were disseminating, and there was a chance for questions afterward. And Doc or Katie or somebody would be watching along so that they could make a list of the questions that would be possible to answer at the end of the session. And it was interesting to see how each of the presenters worked. Having presented at conferences internationally myself over the years in music education, I always thought that, well, you always have to be prepared for your audience, but you also have to be cued into what's happening with your audience as you're working, because it could be easy to go off on a tangent, but it could also be really important to go off on that tangent, because sometimes that's more important than the original message that you were attempting to get out. And so it's working the room, which I think all of us who have done any kind of presenting, it's a skill, and it's not something that everybody is particularly good at. There were some people. I'm one of those people who quite likes the information to be disseminated very, very clearly, very, very concisely, and sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's just the information and the information that you need. I have to say it was refreshing, although there was a lot of talk about gear and equipment and things you could use. There was also really much more of a bent on of developing not just your personal style, but examining what you wanted to do with your podcast, and thinking about that it's not your podcast, it's your audience's podcast. And I suppose I'm still guilty of that, because my musings will always be something about what I'm thinking, and there may not be an audience for that. But for me, in the live portion of this podcast, it's important for me to just be consistent, to keep putting things out there, to hone my skills a little bit better, and to just, again, using an Ecamm word, although they didn't coin it, to flow. So I'm enjoying that a lot. And the conference itself, there were several presenters who were extremely high energy, which was really refreshing for first 5 minutes, and that was just hard to listen to because they were really, really energetic. And maybe that's just because I'm old. I still listened because what they were trying to say was extremely valuable, and it's not my style of working, although I have been high energy in those of you who have attended any of my workshops will know that you always have to do something. You cannot just sit on your whatever. Anyway, so the information was really good from this conference. I used a lot of screenshots just to remember. Well, people would suggest people that you needed to listen to as a podcast. So I've made a list for myself. I've gone through all of those now, so I know who I would like to give a listen to and expand my podcast repertoire. And of course, it is extremely important to listen to and research your own podcasts or things that are similar to yours. And it's never stealing, I feel, when somebody has a good idea. And it's always but you always have to make an idea your own. You cannot be someone else. You cannot emulate someone else. You can only be you, because if you don't, then you're just not true to who you are. So this event gave me some really interesting ideas. I had done a little bit of Canva, but not very much in the past. But I'm going to go and review that again now, because I think that might actually be useful to me now. And start overviewing a little bit more about what I'm going to say on these particular podcasts. What I did put out during the session was a basic warm-up for podcasters, because there seems to be a real reticence about considering your own voice. It's never saving your own voice. It's just giving your voice a little bit more flexibility and waking it up. Some days it will be better than others, but it will get you through. And it was just a little 2-minute thing. And I've found that I think that could be my niche, is short little snippets of things to do, because I always have to do something or get people to do something. And the podcasts, for me, are never going to go over 10 minutes. So with 8 seconds left, or 2, oh gosh, I'm going to go over 10. thank you, Ecamm, for having produced a really interesting, valuable session for those 2 days. And although I couldn't stay up for the last ones because I live in the UK and I'm relatively old and I just fell asleep, not because it was boring, just because I'm old. Thank you very much for presenting that. Really appreciate it. Everybody else, from my corner of the universe to you, that's it. Have a good one.